Imagine, it was a Friday night, in the middle of autumn, when you, Anna and her father, Mr. Joachim, decided to do something different. Ever since Anna mentioned the famous Stull Cemetery, you were intrigued. Stories about the local varied from macabre tales to readings about portents for the alien. But one thing was certain. Everyone said that the cemetery had an inexplicable aura, attracting the curiosity of the brave and astonishing the sensitive. The opportunity came when Mr. Joachim, known for his practical and scientific approach to life, suggested that we submit to unmasked urban languages. Anna, always fascinated by the supernatural, convinces you to join the night expedition. We will combine the sound of dawn when the silence is deeper and the shadows denser. At 3 a.m., Mr. Joachim drove the cart down the deserted road leading to the cemetery. The moon was covered by 9 dark ones, leaving the night even more shadow. We will arrive at the cemetery gate once at 4 a.m., while the rusty degrees go outwards, as shown, resisting to let anyone in. The cemetery was shrouded in a cold, damp mist that seemed to emanate from one's own tears. The ancient, twisted trees cast sinister shadows that danced in the wind. You stepped out of the cart, your lanterns illuminating centuries-old tombs and time-worn marble slabs. The water was icy and wet, and each step brought the hunter closer to your feet. Initially, the feeling of being in a sacred, quiet place began to dissipate as the silence became oppressive. Footsteps echoed through the tears, creating a strange echo that seemed to mix with distant murmurs. Anna opened her hand tightly, eyes wide and fixed, taking in every single one and the shadow as if she was searching for something she didn't want to find. It was then that the first signs that they might not necessarily be sobbing began to appear. A narrow and distant, as if a door had been opened for a long time, echoed in the hiding place. Mr. Joachim Franziu looked on, trying to locate the source of some. Nerves begin to take over, and a feeling of uneasiness spreads to the group. Anna, in a mix of courage and curiosity, suggested that they take a photo to record the moment. She sticks the cell phone out, points in the direction of the tears, and clicks. A flash momentarily illuminated the cemetery, capturing the shadows and contours of the tombstones. They didn't know that this photo would become irrefutable proof of what was happening out there. As Anna put the cell phone away, something inexplicable happened. A faint light began to shine inside the car parked a few meters from where they were. It was a yellowish light, like a candle, dancing softly inside the transported vehicle. Oh, Mr. Joachim, always the most pragmatic of the group, decided to investigate. As you approached the cart, a feeling of being watched intensified. You and Anna stumbled into nervous glances, unable to identify the source of this feeling. It was then that someone strange and whispering began to ponder the matter, as if several voices failed at the same time. But without any words it would be clearly understood. Mr. Joachim arrived at the cart and looked out the window. The light inside the cart still shone, but there was nothing inside. He shook his head, trying to rationalize what he was selling. Before I could say anything, something even more disturbing struck me. A figure began to materialize in Nivoa, a few meters from where you were standing. It was tall and escort, with fuzzy contours that seemed to melt us into the darkness. The eyes glowed like 2 burning embers, fixed on you as if we were vouching for your souls. The entire group was paralyzed in the middle. The heart beat so loud it seemed to echo in the silent cemetery. Mr. Joachim slowly recovered, keeping his eyes on the sizing figure. You set Anna walking, feeling the heat and cold mixed in a regret that ran down your spine. The figure moves closer, floating on the dew-covered mesh as if it were not effeminate from pregnancy. It was an indescribable presence, and the feeling of supernatural power emanating from it was almost palpable. In an instant that seems to last an eternity, the figure disappears into the darkness, leaving only the whispering echo that slowly dissipates. Oh, Mr. Joachim, finally gathering his courage, he wanted to hug you firmly next to him. Without saying a word, we all agreed that it was time to say Dolly. We will run to the cart. The horse will fly under your feet as you rush to escape that gloomy place. However, the night still had one last surprise in store for us. When we were finally back in the safety of the city, heart still pounding in her chest, Anna shouted at him for the photo she had thrown away. With shaking hands, she opened her phone and found an image captured in the cemetery. The photo was a disturbing testimony of what she had lived through. Behind the old tombstones, right in the background of the image, there is an indescribable figure. It was not a person like the one you knew. It was something else, something dark and charming. The face was deformed by an evil smile. The empty eyes seemed to penetrate the soul of the one who looked into the photo. That image was proof that something more than human understanding inhabited that place. She trembles in Anna's hands as you hold the face of the attacker, a haunting reminder that some readings are not just stories to tell. That night you were changed forever. We will never forget the dark night in the same way again, knowing that the supernatural could be waiting for us in some shadow, waiting to be discovered by curious and courageous eyes like yours. I hope you liked the story, because the second story is even more chilling. Just don't forget to see if you're already subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any terrifying stories. It was a Halloween night that promised to be memorable for Laura, Pedro, Lucas, and their friends. We decided to explore an old cemetery among the city's inmates, attracted by the macabre atmosphere and the promise of life-supporting stories that circulate through the school corridors. With flashlights in our hands and racing hearts, we passed through the buried gates of the cemetery, where the moonlight failed to penetrate between the twisted branches of the ancient trees. The mounds stood like silent sentinels, covered in moss and dancing shadows. Each step echoed in the silence of the night, and the wind sometimes blew through the tiers, creating sounds that seemed like ghostly whispers. Laura felt a shock down her spine, but she was determined to show courage in front of her friends. As we walked among the mounds, the atmosphere became increasingly tense. Pedro, always the most skeptical of the group, began to nervously laugh at their own apprehensions, trying to dispel the growing grip on their hearts. Lucas, on the other hand, fell silent, absorbing every shadow and movement on his face. It was then that a voice echoed out at midday, whispering their names with palpable urgency. Laura, Pedro, Lucas. We all froze, looking at each other for explanations. Laura's heart raced as she tried to find the source of the voice, but saw only shadows moving through tears. The voice continued, getting closer, instilling fear and curiosity at the same time. That's when a dark figure emerged from the shadows, moving slowly in the direction of the group. It was Daniel, the school sweetheart, known for his tacky toys. He's tall, securing a device that projected voices and echoing sounds into the air. Scared, you're scared. Daniel Zombu, his smile reflected in the painted moonlight. Laura felt a mixture of relief and anger at having fallen into the armadillo. Friends stare at the rest of us, breathing hard to calm their nerves. But the tension does not diminish. Some friends, taken by a combination of adrenaline and accumulated tension, pushed Daniel hard. The brave man lost his balance and fell to the ground, hitting his head hard on an ancient marble tombstone. The sound of the impact resonated in the silence of the night, followed by a muffled cry of pain. The initial fear turns into despair when we realize the embarrassment of the situation. Daniel did not get up and blood ran down his head with a deep cut. Panic. I also told the group as we tried to come to terms with it, but the permanence was indelible. With trembling steps, you will run to the main road in search of help. As the lights of the passing cars illuminated the cheering faces of the teenagers, now realizing how much time had passed since the Brincadera arrived. The paramedics arrived quickly, taking Daniel to the hospital while the police asked them what had happened. In the end, Daniel survived, but he needed stitches in his head and only a few weeks of recovery. The incident left deep marks on everyone. What began as a search for adrenaline and fun ended up teaching them all a painful lesson about the limits of pranks and the unexpected consequences of the environment transformed into violence. In the days that follow, the group of friends will become even closer, sharing the weight of guilt and relief that Daniel has survived. Laura, Pedro and Lucas learn after Halloween that true terror does not lie in the spirits or the shadows of the cemetery, but only in the impulsive escorts and the unforeseen consequences that can arise when the mind and recklessness meet in the darkness of the night. This experience left a deep impression on them, leaving them with a new perspective on life and the importance of thinking before acting, especially when intense emotions are involved. I hope you liked the story, because the third story is even more chilling. Just don't forget to see if you're already subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any terrifying stories. I hope you liked the story. Imagine yourself, a little girl named Celia, who has an insatiable curiosity and an adventurous escapade. She lived in a small town where everyone knew her, and her favorite activities included exploring new and old places. Celia was especially fascinated by the Greenwood Cemetery, a place filled with old tombstones and huge, mysterious trees. The cemetery has a special aura, which attracted Celia and her friends like a magnet. Although we all thought the place was amazing, this only increased the excitement of the visits. One autumn afternoon, when the sun was already low and the shadows of the trees grew longer, Celia and her friends, Tomas, Laura, and Miguel, decided to pay the cemetery one more visit. The heat was covered with dry leaves that formed a crack barrel under their feet, and the cold wind blew gently, creating a perfect setting for an exhilarating adventure. As we walked along the stranded harbor of the cemetery, they noticed that everything was quieter than usual. We didn't hear the passers-by singing or even the sound of distant cars. It was as if the world had stopped. Celia felt a surge in her spine, but she didn't want to show it to her friends. Among the tombstones that dated back centuries, Celia and her friends always found something new and intriguing. Sometimes it was an ancient inscription. Other times it was an object left by some mysterious visitor. That evening, however, something different caught Celia's eye. Next to a particularly old and worn tombstone, she saw a tattered figure. The figure seems to fluctuate, almost like a ghost, and has an indistinct human form. "Are you selling water?" Celia whispered, pointing towards the figure of Nivoa. Her friends watched her in the direction she indicated and also told her the figure. Celia's eyes filled with regret and she grabbed Laura's hand. They approached slowly, trying to understand what was there. The figure seemed to move softly, as it tried hard to watch them. Suddenly, the figure disappears, leaving only a trail of mist. Celia and her friends heard a whisper, as if someone was missing, but we couldn't make out the words. The soul seemed to come from all sides at once, making them feel close. We decided to go to the cemetery, but with each step we took, the whispers were louder and clearer. They heard words like "help me" and "no way," which made them even more satisfied. When we finally reached the exit of the cemetery, we thought we were safe. But Celia noticed something strange. Throughout the cemetery, you still hear the whispers and see snow figures on all the edges. When you got home, the feeling of being watched didn't go away. Celia tried to listen to what she had heard, but all those nights she heard strange things in her room, like light footsteps and whispers. As snow figures appeared on the bathroom mirror, on the windows, and even on the dark edges of the room. She felt a cold, intense, as if something was always by your side. Worried, Celia told the country what was happening, but they didn't believe it in her. We argued that it was just her imagination, maybe a burden of it, but Celia knew it was real. She began to avoid the cemetery and ate the same friends, hoping that the ghosts would follow us again. One night, while trying to sleep, Celia heard a whisper clearer than all the others. This time, it seemed like a child's voice, asking for help. She got up, turned on the light in the room, and saw a small snow figure on the edge. The figure extends its hand towards Celia, as if it wanted her to follow it. Despite the fear, Celia felt that she had to find out what was happening. She follows the figure through the house, which was left on the ground. There she found an old wooden box. Inside it, there are old photos of a family that lived in that house many years ago. Among the photos, Celia saw a little girl who looked quite similar to the figure of Nivoa. The girl in the photo looked sad. Celia then understood that the figure was imprisoned by him, asking for help to rest in peace. With her heart racing, Celia lifted the box of photos up to the Greenwood Cemetery. Seeing it, the figure of Navoa appears again, clearer and more defined. Celia placed a box of photos on one of the tombstones, and the figure of Navoa mourned for her before disappearing. The whispers pararam and the cemetery fell silent again. Celia felt a great relief, as a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. From that day on, the figures of Navoa and the strange children will never follow Celia again. She continues to visit the cemetery, but now with respect and care, knowing that some mysteries must be left alone. And so, Celia and her friends learn that sometimes, watchful places hold secrets that must be revealed so that everyone can rest in peace. Over time, Celia discovers more about the Ghost Girl's story. Through research at the local library and conversations with locals in town, she finds that the girl was named Evelyn and she lived many years ago. Evelyn has mysteriously disappeared, and her family never found out what had happened to her. Believe that your spirit will not find peace, wandering the cemetery in search of someone who can help her. Celia felt a deep connection to Evelyn and decided she wanted to do something more to honor her memory. With the help of her friends, she organized a small memorial in the cemetery, with flowers, candles, and a plaque with Evelyn's name on it. During the ceremony, Celia felt a calm and welcoming presence, as Evelyn finally rested in peace. After that day, Greenwood Cemetery became a place of serenity for Celia and her friends. We will continue to visit it, but now with a new purpose, to care for the place and keep the memories of those who rested there. And whenever Celia passed through Evelyn's whip, she felt a little warmth in her heart, knowing that she had helped a spirit find peace. And so, Celia's adventure in Greenwood Cemetery not only taught her courage and friendship, but also the importance of respecting and honoring the past. Even among the Nevis figures and their attendants, Celia discovers that true peace comes from helping others, whether living or dead. And with this lesson, she grows into a young man eager for compassion and wisdom, always ready for new adventures, but now with a gentler heart and attentiveness to the needs of others. Tell me which story made your hair stand on end? Tell me which one you liked the most? Because in the next video the story is even more chilling. Just don't forget to see if you're already subscribed to the channel so you don't miss any terrifying stories.